But remember this, Obama cheated on the election. And we have it cold, hard, blue, and it's getting even more so because the stuff that's coming in is not even believable.
The Trump administration and some Republican senators have their eyes set on former President Barack Obama. Senators Lindsey Graham and John Cornyn are calling for a special counsel to investigate the former president. This is all due to National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard releasing documents alleging Obama-era officials manipulated intelligence related to Russia's interference in the 2016 election. She even accused some officials of, quote, treasonous conspiracy. Gabbard spoke on the matter this week during the White House press briefing. Let's listen.
Of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. It has to do with an outgoing president taking action to manufacture intelligence to undermine and usurp the will of the American people in that election and launch what would be a years-long coup against the incoming President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Now an Obama spokesperson has denied any claims of alleged treason by the former president, and the Trump administration has yet to show any proof of these accusations. This comes at a time when the Trump administration is trying to pivot the spotlight away from the Epstein files. But even if Republicans find Obama did commit a crime while in office, the new Supreme Court ruling may give him immunity against any prosecution. White House spokesperson was asked about this during a press briefing. Here's what she had to say.
Look, the president has made it clear that he wanted these documents to be declassified. He wanted the American people to see the truth, and now he wants those who perpetuated these lies and this scandal to be held accountable. As for what accountability looks like, as the director said, it's in the Department of Justice's hands, and we trust them to move this ball forward.
Well, you would agree
Stephanie.
President Obama cannot be charged based on that immunity.
Again, I'll leave that to the Department of Justice.
So I just admit that the Democrats were, playing a few games in the last segment, talking about in relation to the Epstein files and their lack of interest a few years ago to right now. And I think if Republicans are honest right now, this feels like political retaliation in many ways, because they understand this won't go very far. This will waste taxpayers' dollars, opening up an entirely new inquiry, spending time trying to litigate this in Congress before it actually gets litigated, and then he has complete immunity. And I think that this pattern of retribution is something that President Trump kind of promised and almost guaranteed on the campaign trail, and it's something that we're seeing him follow through with at a time when it's very convenient because he has another issue on his hands, which is Epstein, and this is it's growing in popularity among the base, but I still don't know that it's worth all of what we're doing right now, because at the end of the day, people shouldn't have wanted Russia, even if it's a smaller involvement than suggested, involved in any part of our election or meddling in any part of our social media conversations around the election, or even suggesting that they like a candidate better, because what does it have to do with the Russian population?
It was fair to say, I think, that the timing of this is suspect and probably trying to serve as a distraction from the Epstein files. However, what I found in the documents related to the emails and other communications that were released by Tulsi Gabbard was really a confirmation of what a lot of Republicans said about the Russian investigation into Donald Trump during the 2016 election. And some really concerning things that I think actually do warrant congressional investigation and perhaps even litigation. What we found in these documents is that the Obama administration, their own intelligence analysts were telling them that they did not believe that Russia had the capacity or even the desire to hack the election, as was termed at the time, and that they only had a limited role in trying to sow division. But before and after the election, we see different things coming out of the intelligence community. According to these documents, what happened was the intelligence analysts prior to Trump getting elected were saying that the Russians tried to hurt both candidates, that they were interfering. Nobody disputes that they wanted to interfere in the election. They do that in every single election. But then after Trump won, all of a sudden the IC conclusions were saying that they were actively trying to help Trump, which was the predicate for Crossfire Hurricane, suggesting that the Trump campaign had actively colluded with the Russians. And these email documents indicate that it was CIA Director John Brennan, then DNI James Clapper, and the president himself who told these intelligence analysts to reach a different conclusion than what they had been saying in these private meetings. In fact, one of the most concerning parts is that when Trump started receiving the presidential daily briefing, which is something that every president-elect has access to, they were set to brief the president in one of those intelligence meetings on the idea that Russia had not actively tried to help Trump. Obama canceled that meeting and then said that they need to go back and basically look again, and all of a sudden the new presidential daily briefing included this assessment that they had tried to actively help Trump. So this was the manipulated intelligence that Tulsi Gabbard was talking about, and if it was the case that Brennan, Clapper, Obama, and other high-level IC officials were changing conclusions using things like the Steele dossier or things like confidential informants that were not deemed trustworthy by these intelligence analysts, then that is a crime.
Yeah, and I think what Tulsi Gabbard unsealed this week, it raises questions about how connected, like you said, Vladimir Putin was to Trump and how much collusion was there. But I don't think it raises the questions about whether Russia interfered with the election at all. And so
I agree.
Is it worth looking into from a president? Whether they spent too much time and effort on it is one thing, but whether it's a treasonous conspiracy, I feel like it's overcomplicating the situation, because people have the decision as president and having their cabinet members and their entire team looking into stuff. This is something that's worth, you said it happens in every election, but I think that to know that there was information coming out specifically about Hillary Clinton, to know that there was an intentional, support from my purview for Trump, it seems that combing through all this information shows that there was an intended bias and so then naturally the question would be like, what is the connection for Trump to Putin, and what is the point here? And the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is led by Senator Marco Rubio at the time, that came up with some of these conclusions, who's now Trump's Secretary of State. I mean, why are we not talking to him? He was on the forefront of everything happening, and this is a bipartisan committee that decided and came up with this information that yes, Trump did not collude with Vladimir Putin. However, Russia and its intelligence was trying to seep into our election and impact it in ways that would benefit President Trump. And so that is problematic. And we decided as a bipartisan government to move forward with this. So peeling it back and trying to find a treasonous conspiracy in this seems like an overreach and an intended distraction more than anything else.
Well, again, the problem isn't that there's a conclusion that Russia interfered. Everybody agrees with that. But the problem is that they used that to then claim that they were actively trying to help Trump, which led to, again, the investigation claiming that Trump
releasing stuff
colluded.
about Hillary, is that not actively trying to help?
Okay, so there's a couple of issues with that. The first of which is that the Steele dossier itself has since been deemed the product of Russian disinformation, meaning Russian spies were feeding a lot of those false claims to Michael Steele, who then passed that along to the FBI. So they did release damaging information on Trump. And what these documents also show is that they had a whole list of other accusations against Hillary Clinton that they did not release, including claims that she was on barbiturates, that she was not mentally well, that she had issues with suicidality. None of those got released during the election. So if it was really the Russians' goal to merely damage Hillary and not damage Trump, none of those things would have happened. So, I mean, it's nice to say, yes, we should look forward and move on. We know Russia interfered, but ultimately there were people, including the president himself, who spent his entire first term battling accusations of collusion, to the point that 3/4 of Democrats believed that Trump had colluded with the Russian government because of this investigation. And we also saw multiple members of his team have their reputations destroyed, have to spend millions of dollars in defense fees, people like Michael Flynn and Michael Caputo. It was really a scandalous time in our nation's history. And if Obama and his intelligence officials were deliberately manipulating evidence and intel in order to try to spark that investigation, that needs to be held accountable.
Well, I know we're going to be talking a lot more about this. We're running out of time, but we have a lot to say here, and Trump is not going to let this go.
No, definitely not. All right, Time Magazine released its 100 Best Podcasts, and you might be shocked at who didn't make the cut. Don't go anywhere.